All right, welcome back to Lindroth Hockey Podcast. This is in partnership with the Black and Gold Hockey LLC. We are here with co-host father and son duo Andrew and Jim Lindroth. Dad, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Andrew. How you doing?
Doing just fine. So we've got a very special guest with us here today. We're very grateful that he has joined us on the show. So today we have special guest David Ling. So David began his junior career as a 14-year-old in the IJHL and continued playing juniors throughout the OHL. He was drafted in '93 during the 7th round of the NHL draft by the Quebec Nordiques. Later on, he went to claiming the OHL scoring title, MVP award, and the CHL's Player of the Year award during his final year in juniors. After graduating in '95, he began his professional journey starting in the AHL, suiting up for the St. John Flames for the '95 and '96 season. Following his first pro year, would end up blossoming into a 20-plus year hockey career, suiting up for NHL teams such as the Montreal Canadiens and the Columbus Blue Jackets, as well as playing all over around the world in a total of 14 different leagues until finally retiring from the game in 2018. He's a hockey Ironman, as tough as they come, and obviously a true leader on the ice. So without further ado, please welcome our special guest, David Ling. Sorry, that was a mouthful, David. How are you?
It's like my elite prospect page. No, I get it. Thanks for having me. And I enjoy talking hockey.
Awesome, man. Well, go ahead. Then we'll start it off.
So I'm excited, David, because you grew up in PEI, Prince Edward Island, and my grandfather's from PEI, and my whole McLeod clan is from PEI. So not a lot of players came from PEI. And when you were beginning playing, I don't even think there were any major junior teams at that time. So when did you start taking hockey seriously?
Well, I'm in Canada and in the Maritimes, we call it, and there's not much else to do but hockey. And there's, you grow up either a Leafs fan or a Montreal Canadiens fan, and you, like you said, there was no major junior, so it was all TV and word of mouth of the hockey. But I have an older brother who ended up playing hockey at Notre Dame University, but so he was 2 years older. So I got into it probably a little early because I did have a brother who was older and into hockey. But 3 or 4, I started to get on the skates and playing. But got real serious when you pee wee into the pee wee and you start playing teams from Ontario and stuff, and you've been able to compete.
Awesome. So you were drafted, like I said, in the 7th round. I'm always curious, what is your draft story? How did you find out that you were drafted?
Well, it's, I was from the Maritimes. I was playing that back in the '90s, where I'm 5'9", so my size was a little bit against me, and I had to go play junior and fight my way into getting drafted and try to prove that I'm only 5'9" on the score sheet and not on during the game. So I did go. I did go to the draft. It was in Quebec City. I did take my dad and my grandfather, and we went to the draft, and I waited till the 7th round and got drafted. So it was, we made a decision knowing that there's a chance that we were driving to Quebec City to see me not get drafted, but we took that risk, and it ended up panning out because it was an experience that, one, you'll never forget. Two, it's besides playing your first game and scoring your first goal, it's right up there as your top moment in hockey.
So when it got to the 7th round, were you kind of thinking, okay, maybe I didn't get drafted, or were you still hopeful the whole time?
I always been, I don't know if it's overconfident. I always thought that I could play. I always thought that I wasn't too small. I always thought that I wasn't in a situation that so I did think, I still thought I was going to get drafted. So I never had one of those. My dad probably had that moment where he thought that I wasn't going to get drafted, but in my mind, I still remember not thinking at that. I'm sure I would have been really disappointed if I didn't, and embarrassed maybe going back to show my face on the island, but it worked out.
Absolutely.
So in 1995, you lit up the OHL. You were the first team All-Star. You earned the Tilson, the Jim Mahan Trophy, CHL Player of the Year. You had 61 goals, 74 assists, 135 points. That's the stat. But what I'm interested in at that point in time, when you're lighting it up, who were some of the mentors that were help teaching you how to be a player both on and off the ice?
Well, my coach at that time, my from my second to my third year junior, my coaches changed, and I did have a coach my first 2 years that I did respect and looked up to, and Dave Allison, who went on to coach in the NHL. But my third year, I had a guy who I'm actually still friends with, Gary Agnew, who came in and put a lot on my shoulders and put a lot, trusted me and showed me not only what the game was, but I was 18, 19 years old, and taught me how to become from a boy to a man. So, that was one at that time, that was the thing that made that jump. But there's, my dad and my mom were influential in my career. They were, they supported me. I had Forby Kennedy, who played with the Flyers back in the 60s, who coached me in junior, who was a very big influential in the tough side of the game and taught me how to play. And I remember him coming up and asking me, "Do you want to play away?" And away meaning, "Do you want to go play junior up country?" And I said, "Yeah, I want to go play." He goes, "Well, you're going to have to learn how to fight." So it started at a young age, and I got a mentor from that. But and then there was a guy playing in the NHL at the time, and I wore 17. I wear 17. My kids wear 17, and it's because Gerard Gallant, who's from Summerside, PEI, and he was really the only NHL from PEI when I was growing up, and that's where I got my number, and my kids got their number.
And we're gonna talk about, you definitely had the enforcer role throughout your career, but with stats here at 95, 96, I don't think you had time to be an enforcer. I don't know what your penalty minutes were, but 135 points. That's like 2 points a game or something, isn't it?
It's funny because all my buddies teased me, and my teammates. I ended up having 136 PIMs, so I've never had more points than PIMs. So I almost did that year, but didn't.
I was about to say, yeah, that was over penalty minutes that season still, even with all those points. So going back, so David, you have played for many leagues across the world, and I'm specifically now talking about the ones overseas. So I'm just curious, what was the best league to play for, and which one paid the best?
Well, the best hockey, no question, outside the NHL, I think, and I still believe it, even better than the American League, is the KHL, and the skill level and the players that they get over there, and the reason they do get the players over there and that the Russians stay over there is because it is the best paying league outside the NHL. So I think both questions answered are the KHL. The other leagues that I played in, Finland was more North American, up and down. Switzerland was really skilled hockey, but was a bigger ice surface and was more puck possession. All the countries I played in had a different style, but the KHL had, I think, from bottom to top, the top talent outside the NHL.
So I usually ask this question in general, but obviously it's such a hot topic now, especially I'm sure we've all seen Tom Wilson trending on Twitter for the shenanigans last night. So do you agree that this is a prime example from that situation, if you're familiar with it, of why fighting / tough guys should stay in the NHL? Or do you think it's the opposite? Do you still think that maybe fighting shouldn't be in the NHL anymore? What are your opinions on that for today's hockey?
I don't think the stage fighting should be in the game anymore. I do think that you should be able to have a tough guy. I know that it allows for your skilled players to play harder. And I do think that, that sometimes the players do have to dictate what rules are set on the ice and let sometimes the ref. And I see your shirt, and I know, and like, it's every time I look at it, I look at Brad Marchand. He crosses the line, but would every team like to have him on their team? And it's a yes. Would everyone like Tom Wilson? Yes. If he was on the trading blocks going into the playoffs, would 20 teams line up to take him? Yes. So it's just, you can't have the fourth line guy that can't play anymore. But I think that the Tom Wilson is a mold that every team is looking for still, and it's hard to find. But do I agree that there should be some kind of fighting? Yes, I do.
Yeah, and it was interesting. I didn't watch the game. I watched another game, but yeah, nobody stood up for Panarin, and it seemed like old school hockey. Certainly, Linger and in my time watching hockey, that would have not have been tolerated. Someone would have just come off the bench, and you're not going to let Tom Wilson get away with that. I think some teams have that. Washington's especially tough. but I guess the Rangers aren't. I didn't see anybody step up to Wilson. Not that I'd want to personally, but I mean,
I think that culture is gone out of the game. I think I played up until, 2018, even it was in the East Coast League, but it's the same kind of culture. I think that when I first started, if you bumped the goalie, it was a line brawl. 10 years later, if you bump the goalie, we're fighting. And now 10 years from there, you bump the goalie and you might get a 2-minute penalty and no one touches you. So I think it's a culture thing. And I think the team toughness isn't there anymore. I don't think that the culture where, if I don't stick up for my teammate, I'm going to get in trouble from my teammates or my coach, that was in the game in the 1990s, early 2000s. I think that's gone. I think there are guys that will stick up, but there's majority of the guys just don't have it in them and just don't have that, I think it's the accountability. I don't think you're allowed to yell at a kid for not sticking up and fighting your teammate anymore. I think that they have the players have more rights than the coaches nowadays. Same with kids and parents, as you would know, Dad.
well, it's funny because we've some of our guests we've had on here, the older vets, like yourself, that they talk about sort of well, I won't sugarcoat it, coddling of these younger players coming into the NHL of, you used to make a mistake, you were benched. That was it. You shut your mouth and you do your time until the coach sends you out there. But now it seems like, well, Linger, next time when you go out there, try to do this as opposed to that. And I don't know, maybe that's kind of, certainly changed in the game, like you said.
So who was the toughest team you were a part of? And I'm counting, it could be OHL days, it could be AHL, Europe. What was the toughest team you were part of?
Yeah, it's not even in question. There was a team I played in St. John's Maple Leafs during the lockout, and we had one or two heavyweights, and we had 7 or 8 middleweights. And I explain it, and we talk about it all the time because guys love talking about the stories. But I remember sitting on the bench, and if there was a guy fighting, you could feel the vibration on the bench because everyone else wanted to be out there, and they wanted to be the one fighting. So it was kind of like, why is he getting to do it? Why can't I? So there was 8 or 9 animals on our team that just really enjoyed and really liked that part of the game, and it carried over. We did have a skilled team, and it allowed our skilled players to be even more skilled, and when there was issues, it was a fun game to play. And I think we had 4 or 5 brawls. It was a lockout year. We had one brawl at the Air Canada Center because we were playing in the NHL rink. Sometimes I think we brawled in Ottawa. They had Monty or Emery, the guy that died, in net, and they had Chris Neal, McGrath, and there was it was that time, and that year we had not even close. I've always been on teams where there's 3 or 4 guys that like to fight, but this was like literally 8 or 9 that really, and you could feel the vibration, like it's my turn, I want it. Why are you doing it? So that was the toughest.
Wow.
That must have been like pressure for the guys that had to get into it, because if you get into a fight, you get your bell rung, you got to go back to the bench. If you lost, that's not good. Did the other guys give you?
Yeah, but it was funny because we were so close that if one guy got beat up, there was a lineup. The guy had to fight. The other guy that beat him had to fight, and guys had to decide if they wanted to fight once or if they wanted to fight 3 times, because if you beat one of our guys, there was another guy coming.
And of course, they know that, right?
Yeah, and it sets it. We were a team that not many teams wanted to play against, and for that reason, yeah, you might be tougher than one of our guys, but we had a team that stuck together. And the next guy was coming, and if you beat him, there was another guy coming. So it was fun to play on because you could really do whatever you wanted.
Yeah. So then we talked about the toughest team you're part of. So who was arguably the toughest player you ever fought? Doesn't matter what league. Who was the toughest player you had to fight? I fought a lot of guys in junior before they became really, really tough. But the toughest guy I fought in pro, I think, it might be surprising, but it was Jim Vandermeer with the Flyers. He came across and hit me, and
and I dropped my gloves, and he hit me with a punch that rang my head. I never got rang like that. And then he hit me with a couple more, and I didn't get really pounded, but it was like, oof, I don't know if I could fight that guy again and do any much better, because the punch hit me, and it was the first time during a fight that really got hurt, where I felt like my bell was wrong.
Gotcha. So I want to leave the fighting. Andrew loves talking about the fighting. So your first NHL game, you get the call up from Montreal. It's in Montreal. It's first Boston Bruins.
Wow.
I mean, you can't wish for a better, a better game, except being on a Bruins. But anyway, what was that like? But I want to ask this question. Some of our other guests that have made it to the NHL, they always talk about their first game, the locker room culture, especially with a captain, that you're never treated any differently than any other player. If it's you play one game in the NHL or 1,000, you kind of made it there and you're one of the team. Was that sort of your experience, and what was it like for you to play in that first game and leading up to the first game?
Well, it's funny because you dream of playing your first game, you dream of playing on TV in your first game, but the stage that I got to play in was, Montreal Canadiens against the Boston Bruins, Saturday night, hockey night in Canada, Ray Bourque. And it's made me, I haven't been nervous in too many situations in the game. And I was really nervous. I remember coming in the night before, there was no cell phones, but Shane Corson called my room and said, we're going out for dinner. So, and that was part of the way that they did it. They welcomed you into the team, no matter if you played, like you said, one game or 500 games. And then you get into the room, and when you get there, I'm sure they look at you like, who's this guy? But when you get there, you're 20 guys trying to win a game. It's not one guy looking at others. And on good teams, it's a team and we're all part of it, trying to win a game. Back then, the guys that got called up usually didn't play too much like they do now. You got 4 or 5 minutes. But I remember going into the game, a few shifts, and I run Ray Bourque behind the net. I hit him, I fall down, but they took the picture before I fell, and it was in the Montreal Gazette the next morning. So I have a picture of me hitting Bourque, and it looks like I'm getting the better of him, but if you were able to play the picture, I fell down after, and he probably went down and got a scoring chance. So it's just funny, but it's a keepsake that I ended up getting, and I have on my wall now is me hitting Ray Bourque.
That's pretty awesome. I remember seeing that earlier today, so that's a pretty funny story.
So you're old enough that you played in the old IHL. You played for Indy, Utah, and of course, Kansas City. So young people don't understand the unique situation that was that rebel outlaw IHL. So my question is, what was it like to play in the IHL?
It was when you say it now, the kids and the 30-year-olds don't understand what it was. It was a league that was, like you said, an outlaw league, and I was in a situation in Chicago that I wasn't getting what I thought I could get. And instead of not being able to go anywhere, you were able to go to the I and negotiate a contract with an independent team and play there. And you go there, and there's some teams that were affiliated with NHL clubs, and there were some that were totally independent. You had young prospects, and you had older guys that were leaving the game out of their career. And like on the team in Indy, we had Glenn Featherstone, and then in Kansas City, we had Michael Bovanka and guys like that. So it was really highly skilled. But I remember going in my first shift, and I was dirty with my stick. I liked to fight. And I remember going in the corner, and a guy coming behind me, and he's going, I'm on your left shoulder. I'm on your left shoulder. So it was kind of more of a gentleman's game, where there was older players that didn't really want to engage in too much on their way out, but the skill level was really high, and the money was a lot better than the American League. It wasn't as good as the NHL in any mind, but it was better than the AHL. So you were able to leverage the AHL and go to that league. And if I probably had to do it over, I might not have done it and stuck and battled it out with my NHL club and see what did. But you're that cocky 20-something-year-old that thinks that they're better than they are, and there's better options out there.
So even though we tend to be more of a Bruins Bay show at times, we actually live in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So can you give our Tulsa fans here a good Kansas City Midwest hockey story?
Yeah, I played 2 years in Kansas City, and we played right down in Kansas City. But I remember going there, and this isn't really a Missouri. It's more of a U.S. story where I got there and they were announcing when there was an icing, and they were announcing when it was offside. This was and they were teaching the Americans how the game really was played, and the fans were cheering and stuff, but they weren't as educated as they are now, and they're not in it because they didn't have hockey. So I find us Canadian boys would giggle and laugh that that was icing. The puck was pushed down the ice from the other side of red line.
So was it, and it was the same way when you played for the Oklahoma City Barons too, right?
Yeah, well, that's a funny story. I didn't end up going to Oklahoma. I played I played with the coach back in Fredericton, Jerry Fleming, and they had a couple problems with visas and didn't have enough players coming over the border to play against the Marlies. So he called me. I was playing in Brampton, a Canadian team. He knew I had my green card and could do both, and called me up, and I got to play with Oklahoma. But it was on a road trip, so I never really got to Oklahoma where they played.
Wow, interesting. So bouncing back and forth between the American leagues, whether it's the NHL, AHL, ECHL, and then the European leagues, hopping back and forth, was it really difficult to adjust to the other style of play over in the other leagues and then coming back to the American hockey?
So, are you mean in Europe, or you mean like?
Yes, yeah, Europe.
I don't know. It's because I'm a slow and my game and the parts of my game that are above average are my thinking the game, and I'm not a very good skater, but I think the game, and I play the game, and because I did that, I didn't need to adapt to a lot of the games where a lot of players go over to Switzerland. They can't play in Switzerland. They get moved to Russia and they have a good year in Russia because the style of play fit them better. I think because I was slow and I was smart, that I was able to adapt to a lot of leagues. But the biggest change that I had is when I went up to the NHL and back to the American League, that jump back and forth. I went up to the NHL as a fighter, and I'd come back and be on the power play and looking to score. So if I was up too long in the NHL, I'd be up there, and you would come down and you would kind of not have your confidence the first 2 periods of the American League game, but you're looked upon to be the point guy, the power play guy, and whatnot, and then you get called back up and you're the fourth line fighter. Let's go. Yeah, so that's where I had the biggest change in my game and the biggest time to adapt. And you had to really focus mentally to be able to change that. Europe, coming back and forth, I didn't feel that. A lot of players do because the styles don't fit their style.
Wow, interesting.
So how was your role defined? If, like you said, I mean, you were really doing well in the AHL, you get called up to the NHL. Did the coach or somebody say, "Hey, look, we're looking for a fourth line checker," or did you just know they were looking for you to be more of a tough guy, checker guy, or how?
Back in the 90s, early 2000s, when you got called up, you were on the fourth line. So when the NHL team called, there could be the best player in the American League team, could be the best player playing for the American League team, but both the NHL and the AHL team realized that they couldn't play fourth line on any team in the world, let alone the NHL team. So there was a certain amount of guys that couldn't get called up at that time because they would have had to play in the top two lines. They did know that I threw the body around, like to fight. So it was an opportunity that I was able to do. And then to stay there, I knew that I had to do it. So it was kind of like you knew your role, you had to do it. If that's what you wanted to do, you had to do it. Where now, if you're a first line player in the American League, a winger goes down first line or second line in the NHL club, you might go up and take that position. Where back in the 90s, that didn't happen. You were playing fourth line, and someone from the fourth line or third line that was there all year was going up, taking that spot. So it didn't work that way. It does now, and guys get a lot more opportunity.
So after 3 seasons with Columbus in the NHL, you go over to Russia, and I got to say, you've got brass balls to go over there, especially during that time. What was it like living in Russia? We got a bunch of questions about Russian hockey, but Russia.
No, it was crazy. You know, I wouldn't, I went over there and, you know, I'm not a video game guy, so I couldn't stay in my room. I had to go out and see what the country was all about. But it's so, and it's a dangerous place. There's alcoholism, there's drugs, there's street people. It's dangerous. People drive drunk, and everything that was stressful. Like, you would finally get home to be your bed at 8 o'clock at night, and you'd be like drained, just because everything's walking down the streets stressful, because you're watching out in case there's a car coming down the sidewalk, which I seen before too. But the first year I went over there, it was the Super League. It wasn't even the KHL yet, and they were paying you American $100 bills in paper bags, and that's how you got your paycheck. So you were leaving the rink with this bag full of money, not even knowing where to take it. So there was some really difficult stuff there, and you know, there were situations that, because you were making more money than you could in the American League or back in North America, you always sat at home going, should I leave? Should I stay? Is the money that good? Is it good enough? Should I stay? What should I do? And you're always wondering what time. And I remember one time I said my apartment got broken into and they wouldn't move my apartment. So until they took me serious, I packed all my bags up and took my clothes to practice and said, if you don't move me, I'm leaving. So I ended up getting a new place that day. But that's how you had to work the people, because they didn't care about you. They just wanted you to play, whatnot. It was tough. I played there parts of 4 years, and it was tough.
So, I mean, you shit in your pants. You got all this money in cash, and you got to leave the arena. What do you do with it?
Well, I was smart enough. I got the general manager to put it in a safe at the rink, but like, me and another guy had to hire a gunman in a cab to get our money to the bank, because it's not through the electrical system. You're carrying lots of money in a cab, and then we said we couldn't just hire any car or any cab and any gunman, because they could have it set up where they're going to steal our money. So we had to gain some trust with some expats in the area that we ended up becoming friends with, that were from Canada, and they helped us get these people that would help us get this to the bank. And it happened once a month. We had to get there every month with this paper bag full of cash.
I'm surprised you didn't have like some Russian mafia group being like, hey, we'll help it to the bank, but we need 10%.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that would happen. I remember one time coming across I was flying home, and I heard that you were allowed to take 10,000 cash on the plane. So I get to the lineup, and there's no English, so it's all in Russian, and I see $3,000. So I'm like, oh my God, what do I do? So I hid 7,000, and they caught it. The guy caught it up from me. So he's got the $10,000. And I call my agent, and he says he's gonna bribe you. So I'm sitting there, and the camera's above the guy, and he's tapping the pot of money, and and then he lifts up the corner of the mat that he's got underneath him. So he lifts up the corner of the mat and taps the money. So I take one of the hundreds off, and put them under the mat so the camera can't see it. And he taps the mat again, and I take another 100, put it under the thing, and he taps it again. So I put three $100 bills under this mat. He gives me the money back, and on I go. And then I realized that I was allowed the 10, but the 3 had to, anything over 3 I had to tell them. But if I would have told them, but I didn't know the language, so I didn't know. And so that happened all the time. Those situations happened all the time. Freddie Brathwaite used to do certain, hide his money in his pants so he could practice, because they paid him before practice and he didn't want to leave it in the rink. So he would put it in his pants and practice with money in his pants. So crazy stuff like that, always.
That is
It
crazy.
sounds like something out of a bad movie where David Ling ends up in some Siberian gulag somewhere, and everybody's going, what happened to him?
Yeah.
And that could happen.
So what was the difference then between that Russian Federation League that you played for, and then the Super League, and then the KHL? What was the difference between those two leagues?
Well, it became more professional. I think the KHL got new leadership, and they realized that all these horror stories were going to start discouraging people from coming over. And they started to use banks like the rest of the world to get your paycheck into the bank and whatnot. And I think it just became more professional. I think it took them a little while to evolve, but it evolved into a league that now is at least respectable. I don't know if the country's any more respectable, but the league is at least more respectable and not as, you could have woke up when I first went over there, you could have woke up and your money and your team could have been gone and they owed you a whole bunch of money. And there's tons of stories I could go on all day about Russia. I should write a book, but I'm not.
Sounds like it. Jeez. Go ahead with the next one.
So a lot of young players we're seeing tend to put themselves in vulnerable positions on the ice and they end up getting hurt, like McAvoy with the Bruins. Great player, but he tends to, from the fans' perspective, put himself in a vulnerable position. You're an Iron Man. You hardly missed a game. And you mentioned Brad Marchand. And I think Marchand is a good example of a player that was around your size that seems to protect himself on the ice and not put himself in those vulnerable positions. So how did you kind of prepare yourself and craft your game that you weren't getting hurt? Because you played a lot of games.
Well, I think one of the similarities is we're both short. So I think our limbs aren't as long and dangly out when you get into traffic, your limbs aren't dangling out where you can get hit. But I think that my style of game was, I was a heady player. I always had my head up. I didn't put myself in position to get hit. I knew where the vulnerable places on the ice were in front of the net, coming across the middle. And I learned at a young age that when you get rid of the puck, you put your elbow and your stick in the air. And if someone's coming to hit you and you don't see them, they're going to run into your elbow and stick or both, and they're not going to want to do it again. And then you get a reputation where if you're going to hit me, you're going to either get an elbow in the face or you're going to get a stick after you hit me, and you're going to decide if you want to do it again. But I think that the combination of all that kind of allowed me, one, not to get hit much. I remember 5 times where I got hammered, and I remember all 5 of them, and I know the guy that hit me, and because I didn't get hit that much, I got, you get rubbed out, or because people don't like confrontation, people don't like consequences. And when you do have the reputation that if you do this and you're going to get something back, that they decide if they want to do it, or, and then they tell their buddies, and then around the league, and you kind of get your space that way. And I think that helped, plus knowing what places on the ice not to go with your head down. And watching the game now, because I love watching the game's totally different, way more skilled. The players are so much better, so much faster, but they're allowed to go and toe drag into the front of the net, and they're allowed to go through the ice, center ice, without getting hit, where we were allowed to, but you were getting hit and you were getting hurt because you got a cross check in front of the net, or you got an open ice hit that you were feeling for a couple of weeks in going through the neutral zone. So but they're allowed to do that because that's not in the game anymore.
Right. So what led to you to joining Brampton in the ECHL in 2014?
It's funny, I kind of didn't know what I was going to do. I moved back to PEI, and I was working in the government just for 4 or 5 months on a favor, and I was just to figure things out. And it came to December, and I'm like, I hate this. Like this, I don't like this. I want to play hockey. So a buddy of mine was playing in Brampton, and I linked in the coach, said, do you need any players? He said, can you come Tuesday? I said, I can be there Monday. So that's the first year. And then I played with the next coach that came. I played with him, and sometimes I would start off playing senior, and they would call me in January and say, do you want to come play? We have injuries. Because when you're down in the East Coast League, when you do have injuries, there's the AHL has the East Coast League, the NHL has the AHL to grab players, but the East Coast League really doesn't have any feeding system to get them when they're hurt. So 3 years in a row, they called me and said, will you come play? And if they called me now to come play, I wouldn't say no. So I can't say no. I love playing. So they call, I said, sure. And then it worked out. The last year I could play, and I really noticed the speed of the game catch up. I could play the power play. I could get by playing 5-on-5, but the game was starting to pass me by, the speed of it 5-on-5.
When you signed with them, did they discuss any specific role with you? Were they looking for you to put the puck in the net, provide leadership? I mean, you're probably at the same age or maybe even older than the coach by this time.
You know what, it's funny because I played with I was a 20-year-old in junior, he was a 16-year-old. So on the same team. So I was older, I came in and instead of them giving me a role, I took the role as whatever you need. And his name was Colin Chalk. And I said, Chalker, you know what? I said, I'm not going to question in front of the guys. You're the coach. And the guys knew that I respected him as a coach, and I did. It wasn't an act. I know the coach player role. I've watched it all my life, and what the coach says, whether you like it or not, you do it to the best with the way you can. So it worked that way, and he did give me the opportunity to play in an offensive role, which that's what benefits me, because when I'm not playing, if I'm just playing 5-on-5, I'm not that good of a player at that age.
And, we're season ticket holders here to Tulsa Oilers of the CHL. And I was surprised when we moved here 9 years ago, whatever it was. I grew up Boston watching the NHL. We did a little bit of Oklahoma City Barons before they folded. And I never really, saw much of the East Coast League, which isn't really East Coast. But the game's fast. These guys are big. I mean, this is not what I would consider, old AA minor league hockey from, if I was 25 years old. It's really a fast game. And, what was your experiences working with these young guys? I mean, they're not kids. I mean, they're pros, and some of them are big, huge guys, power forwards. What was your experience working with them and mentoring them? I'm sure you were the mentor. It was like, you're the dad on the team.
Yeah, it was fun because I think I'm 22. I act 22, but I'm not. But what happened early when I went up, I got into a couple situations where, I would stick a guy, or I would slash a guy or punch a guy. And it became pretty aware that no one in the East Coast, like not too many guys anymore, want confrontation. So when I would swing my stick or put my elbows up or chirp a guy, everyone on the ice, including my team, thought, "Oh my God, what do we have here? Is this a caveman coming from somewhere else?" And it was kind of like my own team was scared me, but I got a lot of ice and a lot of respect that way. And I didn't have to. It wasn't a lot of teaching. I answered a lot of questions from young guys that were still thinking that the American League and the NHL was their dream, and they thought they could still get there. Some guys don't. And I got a lot of questions of what ifs and what if I do this and how can I do that? And I still in contact with a lot of the players on stuff that if they have questions. So I think, yeah, I mentored that way, but I don't think that I couldn't show them how to stick in or how to shoot. They're all so fast, so skilled. Nowadays it's crazy. Like my kid can pick up the puck on the stick and he goes, "Dad, can you do that?" I'm like, "No." Like, and he's 16. So it's just crazy the amount of talent that not only kids a younger age, but these young pros coming in. Like you look at the NHL now, a lot of the top players are between 18 and 23, and 10 years ago you didn't see that. They were good players, but still the top players were 28, 29. But now it's these 18-year-olds are coming in and they're making a really big impact and being superstar players at 18, and then at 24, 25, you feel like they're really old, but they're not. They're really only 25. So the game's really changing. These young kids are coming up with so much skill.
And so we talk about you being the Iron Man of hockey and playing for so long and hardly missing a game. So you did an interview 4 years ago with Bison, and in one of the sections you had mentioned, I guess, your warm-up routine before games, and you had mentioned that you had coffee and did maybe a 5 light-minute warm-up, no stretching, and then you went out there and played. Is that true? And did you do that every time? Was that your pregame ritual?
Yeah, even sometimes they would have a team in Europe. They would have a team stretch, and I'm like, I don't like, to the point where I don't do it. Like I like having a coffee. I like relaxing. I'd be still in my suit or my and not even change to do that. I'd be drinking coffee, making jokes, watching TV on my phone that they thought was crazy. So it was just a different way. And it was something that I've always done, just drink coffee, maybe take my stick and do a few jumping jacks and have a hot shower and get my gear on. And I'd walk in with 5 minutes left to get my gear on and be on the ice. So that's always the way I did it. My back and groins are getting arthritis, and I feel them now, and I probably should rewound my career and started stretching and warming up better. But at that time I didn't know.
That's funny.
So before we close, and we close with this quick lightning round questions of, well, you'll see in a minute, but before we do that, some people send us some Twitter messages and they want to know, what are you doing now? And of course, we know we've done our homework, but you got your MBA in finance while you were, I guess, playing over in England, and you're in the finance business. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing now.
Yeah, I'm back in Hamilton, Ontario, and I'm licensed in Ontario and Prince Edward Island. So I'm back and forth between both. And I'm working with IG Wealth Management, which is one of the big financial firms in Canada. And we deal with, investments are part of our financial plan. It's a holistic plan that we take you from today into retirement and into death and pass the estate on. So it's not just what return can you get me? It's we sit you down, we talk about your goals and objectives and really dig into what keeps you up at night, put a plan together so you understand and you're taken care of right till to death and beyond. So I didn't know if I would like it. I knew I was going to like the financial part of it, but I didn't know if I'd really like dealing with, the stress of the stock market, the stress of this stuff. But when you really bring in a family or you bring in individuals and you help them and pave the way into retirement and they thank you and they're smiling, it really is something that I'm passionate about, because I know that we're helping direct people in the right way. So I'm really, it's been 3 years and I haven't regretted one bit that I'm in this with this company, IG Wealth Management, which is really great to be a part of.
Is it true from your perspective that, we hear horror stories from hockey players of making lots of money? I'll use the old Bobby Orr with his agent Eagleson that totally screwed him out of money, and other NHL players that they just didn't know anything. They're from the farm out in Saskatchewan, and all of a sudden they got all this money. They blow the money. They're expecting their agent or whoever to help them, and all of a sudden they don't have any money. Was that kind of your experience with some of these players?
Yeah, and it's you try to reach out and you try to help, and the biggest thing that I tell them is you have to, even if your parents aren't financially illiterate and don't know how to help with your money, you have to surround yourself with people that you trust and are going to direct you in the right way. Because there's we only hear the horror stories of the hockey players, but there's your 3 neighbors down the road that have gone through the same situation that no one hears about them. It's just the dumb hockey player that gets taken care of, which sometimes they do, but everyone gets taken advantage of and given advice that they shouldn't take. So I think that the advice that I give is, I don't care if it's me or whoever, but you have to trust and know and understand that they are there to help you, not to help them. Yeah, there's the amount of money or there's you pay them through that way, but you have to trust them that they're paving your future in the right way. And if you don't surround yourself with people, hockey players, athletes are just more vulnerable because of the amount of money they make and at the age they're making it.
Yeah. We're going to end with a lightning round question. So we're going to ask a quick question. You don't have to answer it fast. If you've got a story, that's fine. Or if you just want to give us a 1-word or 2-word answer, that's totally fine. So here we go. We're going to put you on the spot. Who is your favorite line mate?
My favorite line mate, Kyle Wellwood, St. John's Maple Leafs.
We talked about earlier the toughest guy you fought, but what was the toughest player you played against? Just did not give you any room on the ice, just a good player you didn't like seeing on
I mentioned him before, McGrattan.
Toughest goalie to play against.
Ray Emery. Because if you scored out him, you might have to fight him.
Yeah.
Rest in peace. Rest in peace, Ray.
Yes.
Out of every arena that you've ever played in, what was your favorite arena that you played?
Chicago Stadium with the loud crowd. I always heard about it, but with that crowd is that's the first one that I think of. There's some of the, I played in, there's some of the original six rinks that teams that you play in that you love to play in, but the one that when you ask that, the first thing that comes to mind is the crowd cheering during the anthem at Chicago Stadium.
Who is the guy that got under your skin the most?
Got under my skin the most. Guy by the name of Eric Landry, who was in the Montreal system. He was a little smaller guy, rat that wouldn't fight. Well, there's another guy that I think he might have coached Tulsa. No, it might have, I don't know if he's still coaching or he was, Rob Murray.
Yes.
He ended up coaching me. He coached me in Providence, but when I first started, we had some battles in the American Hockey League, and I was dirty, and he might be dirtier.
You're not the first guy to tell us that, where, we talk about, when I talk to Murray now, just occasionally when I catch him after a game, he's like, I don't want any fighting. It's all about winning. It's about making the team better. And I'm like, dude, I remember you playing in Springfield. I remember you playing in Washington, and you were like AHL's greatest, dirtiest, toughest player there was. And he just laughs and he's like, oh, yeah. But yeah, he's totally different as a coach. He doesn't want any.
I experienced it. Everything you said is true.
Craziest / funniest or embarrassing thing that happened to you during a game?
I got traded from Montreal's farm team. No, Calgary's farm team to Montreal's farm team. We went back into St. John to play. And I went into the wrong penalty box.
Did you get?
I was used to going into it, and I went in the wrong one.
So did all the players be like? Did they let it
scream at
slide,
you,
or did
yeah.
they chirp at you?
Well, I got abused, but you could hear the laughter in the crowd, and they started to cheer, and then they, almost a stand ovation when I had to get out of the penalty box and go to the other one.
So I'm going to say this: the craziest thing that I've seen is this guy here, Linger, water skiing behind a Zamboni.
Oh, yeah.
I saw that video. I think that's pretty crazy, Dave.
And you went viral with that, right?
Yeah, that went viral, and that was we were up. I think we were up 6-1 second period, going into the third period. The ref came out of the penalty box where the dressing room was for the refs, slammed the penalty box door and the glass broke. So the Zamboni had to come out. And I used to do it in practice and I don't have a clue why I did it yet, but the Zamboni comes out. I tap the guy beside me and go, watch this. Out the door I went, and for the rest is on video to see.
Yeah. Let's see, the arena with the worst ice conditions that you played in.
The worst ice conditions we used to play in UNLV's rink in Las Vegas in the old I. It was, I think they forgot to paint underneath white, and it looked gray, and it made noise, and the snow built up, and it was slow, and you could hear the cracking, and it's the old UNLV stadium, and it was in Vegas. That's the worst one that sticks out. There's other ones that are bad at certain times. I remember playing playoff game in Portland, Maine, and there was puddles behind the net where they, literally had to cancel the game one time. But that was just a situation. But the one in Vegas was every night it was gray because I think they didn't paint underneath.
Wow. So this is the final one, and I know I'm sure that there's a bunch, but just the first thing that comes to your mind when I ask this question: favorite memory from your hockey career?
Scored my first NHL goal.
Awesome.
And where was that?
And then, where was it?
Yeah.
It was in Dallas against Ron Tugnutt. I ended up playing with him, and I only got 4 goals, but I do have a 2-on-1. Looked off the guy, was on a 2-on-1 with, took a slap shot, scored top shelf, Patrick Roy. So that's the story that I like to tell the most. I got 4 goals, but one's against Patrick Roy.
There
That's
you go.
awesome.
There you go.
Awesome.
Well, Linger, we can't thank you enough for coming on this podcast. This has been great, and you're one of the true Iron Men of your generation of hockey, and that's saying stuff because there's a lot of tough guys. But I've been looking forward to this interview. Andrew's done his research. He's like, I can't wait to talk to this guy. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, David. Appreciate you.
Yeah, for sure. And if you want me on again, I like I said, I love talking hockey. I love giving my opinion.
Well,
Thank you.
We're gonna pause this a moment, and then we'll say right goodbye to you. So.
All right. There you have it, folks. David Ling. So if you don't remember him playing in the 90s in the NHL, he did have 26 fighting majors. I forgot to mention that earlier. So, I mean, you definitely may have seen him. I swear on his Elite Prospects page, he said he played for the Oklahoma City Barons. So it's just an interesting story.
No, he did. I think it was like 3 games, and like you said, I think it was more of a call up or an on loan thing.
Gotcha.
So he never actually played a home game. I think it was just a road game series.
Right. Yeah. And I remember just bringing up the Oklahoma City Barons. Taylor Hall was on the team.
Right. We did watch around 2013, 14-ish area. And Hall was the star.
Yep.
There.
So
And that was
just
the Edmonton system at the time.
Yeah, and he had already been called up to Edmonton the year before. So just strange that's where he ended up. And then he went back up to NHL and never returned back to the
Well,
NHL.
if you haven't seen what Linger looks like today, I mean, the guy could still be playing. I mean, he retired only a few years ago, but I mean, this guy is in top condition. I mean, wow.
Yeah, absolutely. So we appreciate David coming on the show. We hope that everybody enjoyed the show this week. And don't forget to, if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, go ahead and give us a 5-star rating if you like the show. And you got any closing words for us today?
No, I think that's it. I think we'll end with the interview and we'll catch everybody else. We do have coming up, I think it's Aaron
McKenzie
is coming up next on our podcast.
Yes, that is the next guest. So be prepared for that. And we did make a new Instagram. I did. We're going to be more active on it very soon, but I want to go ahead and make it. So go ahead and follow us. It's, of course, Lindroth Hockey Podcast.
Right.
You can find us on there easy. So yeah, other than that, we appreciate everybody tuning in this week, episode 24.
Thank you much.